How did you do finding the characteristics of preschoolers? If you notice on this chart, the answers are indicated by the characteristics that are X'd out. I want to spend just a moment explaining to you why these are not characteristics of preschoolers. First of all, preschoolers' senses are still not fully developed. They're not capable of seeing and hearing and touching and tasting and smelling to the extent that you are. We just have to remember that when we are worried about overstimulation, because it's very hard to overstimulate a preschooler. The second one is competitiveness. Preschoolers are typically not competitive. They do not notice what children around them are doing. They also do not notice the ability levels of others. They're very egocentric and still very much focused on themselves. The exception to this is where we have children entering athletic sports teams at very young ages these days. And so by 3 to 5 years old, some of them have been playing sports such as soccer for several years. You may find a few children that are competitive on the playing field or in athletics at this age, typically boys. But when we speak about classroom experiences, preschoolers are typically not competitive because they're not noticing each other's abilities. In the area of fine motor skills, this is a given. We know that their gross motor skills, their big muscles for walking and jumping and climbing, have definitely developed more than their previous stage. But their fine motor skills are still developing, and for this reason, they need a lot of practice, but it has to be done in developmentally appropriate ways. So things like drawing, writing, cutting, even gluing, using Play-Doh, they're good to some extent, but we want to make sure that our classrooms are not focusing on too many fine motor skills because they'll become easily frustrated. And we want to balance the practice with the product in the fine motor area. The next one is the still cannot talk about emotions. Now, you will find preschoolers that have achieved this ability, but for the most part, preschoolers have difficulty verbalizing their emotions. They can draw them, they can show you pictures of how they feel, but to have a conversation and explain what they're feeling is very much more advanced for them. As they're entering the next stage and getting out of the preschooler stage, you will see a transition in this area. And also the ability to rationalize with them begins to develop, and have conversations about choices. That all develops throughout this preschooler period. Our last characteristic is one called binocular vision. Binocular vision is the ability for our eyes to see together as one, just as if you look through a pair of binoculars. Preschoolers do not have completely developed binocular vision yet. This may account for some of their problems with balance, and if you do things left-sided or right-sided, you may see a difference in preschoolers. So we want to give them the opportunity to keep developing these skills, but it's just good to know as background knowledge. My disclaimer for this conversation is the last statement on our slide. Do all 3 to 5-year-olds have the rest of the characteristics? And of course, we know that not all of anybody has anything. So this is a guideline. You will see 3 to 5-year-olds that have everything on the list and then some, and you will see 3 to 5-year-olds that don't have half of what's on the list. All of that is based on their growth and development. So this is the typical stages and characteristics of preschoolers. And it's good for us to know because this helps us be developmentally appropriate when we plan our activities and lessons.